have to find the yes in a volatile environment. And that's what we're living in right now. If all you do is blame circumstances, you suck as a leader. We can't romanticize. We have to adjust and change and not keep looking back. This is so important. I can't die. In volatile times, there's always incredible opportunity.
Welcome back to another episode of the New Roles Podcast. It's your girl, Breezy, and I am here with Mr. Adrian Crawford, who has a new accessory on today. You're wearing a backwards hat for the first time ever on the New Roles Podcast.
I am. I mean, I would say I'm in my dad era, but not really. It's probably more granddad era, like because of Eva, you know what I'm saying? JT's daughter Eva, stuff like that.
So that comes with a backwards hat.
That comes with a backwards hat.
What's the correlation there?
I don't know, just what granddads do, or Lauren over here saying that I'm in my frat pack, so that's crazy. I like it though, but
frat pack is very different from granddad pack.
I don't know, so I'd say I kind of am in between, you know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So,
yeah, and I think that's a great segue into our topic today, where we're going to talk about how to navigate the gray zone.
Yeah, we go. Let's do it.
Okay, so we're going to jump in it today just because there's a lot of content for us to unpack, both what's happening in the world culturally and how the concept we want to break down kind of plays out into some of the work that we're doing. We usually focus a lot on a leadership concept, so we're still going to do that today, but we also like to kind of dive into cultural moments, some things that we're living up close to, and that's some of what we're going to do today as well. We are in a gray zone.
Yes.
Tariffs are kicking in. UF won the championship.
Dude, don't tell me. Don't remind me of this painful moment I had.
Shout out to our Lake Wells King. Shout out Polk County. Shout out 863.
Oh my God. Walter Clayton is really good though. I like him a lot as a player.
Thank you. All the times that we have just talked poorly about Polk County, we're just going to go ahead and give him his flowers.
They interviewed him at the end and they were like, all the stuff you're excited about winning. And he's like, I can't wait to see my mom. Mama, I love you.
Aww, see, 863. He's also really good about whenever he does contracted stuff. He typically contracts people if he can from kind of where we come from, which is cool.
That's awesome.
Super kind.
No, he's got a chance. I think he's gonna have a long NBA career, so it's awesome.
So today we're gonna dive into a leadership essential that we call Find the Yes. To start us off, when you think about the moment that we are existing in history right now, economically, politically, relationally, why do you think that Find the Yes matters?
Because you have to find the yes in a volatile environment. And that's what we're living in right now. When we talk about the idea of a gray zone, and we've mentioned it before, a gray zone is really this idea where it's in between the old world and the new world we're going into, and we don't know what the rules of the games are yet. And so there's just a lot of things that are consistently happening. And when you're in a gray zone, it feels like every day there's something new that's going to be thrown at you. But what you can't do in these moments, either you can run in fear, you can just kind of go to apathy, but you've got to be able to find the yes, because I believe there's always a yes. You just have to be willing to go and to navigate, because I believe in volatile times, there's always incredible opportunity.
So how would you say people typically respond to what we are seeing play out economically?
I think what tends to happen right now, we either go to fear or we just go to complaining. And so what we'll do is everyone now becomes, they become global economists about like tariffs and everything like that, or all of a sudden they begin to think, hey, tariffs are bad, or tariffs are, they're good, or they think everything President Trump does is right, everything he does is bad. And so it's just everybody goes to that. They just go to fear, or they go to complaining, or just fear. But what people don't do is we don't hear a lot of solutions. Like, let's solve the problem. And how do we solve? Now, again, are we going to we can't fix what's going on with tariffs. We can't fix what's happening in the world of college athletics. But what we can do is that whatever world you're in, how can you actually begin to move? Because I guarantee you, your world right now is volatile. Your world right now is a gray zone. So how can you help solve those problems in your work, in the places you find yourself?
So as someone who navigates a gray zone, how do you stay authentic in systems that are unclear, inconsistent, or oftentimes unfair?
I think, first of all, you actually have to know what's your why. Like, what is actually pushing you and what is actually driving you? Because it doesn't matter what's happening there. Like, if your why, your understanding of your purpose, it will continue to drive you through, even though things don't seem fair. Because what you can do, you can always find something behind of that, where your purpose or your why can go there. You also also have to remember, what are your values? And see, in the gray zone and rules begin to change, you have to then make decisions on what matters to you, what doesn't matter to you, what violates your conscience, what doesn't violate your conscience. And because, again, when those things start to happen, there's always going to be things that used to be normal or used to be normal or used to be abnormal, now could be normal. And does that violate your conscience? And so you have to be able to do that, understand your purpose, and remind yourself of values, honestly.
So with understanding your purpose, I feel like a lot of our listeners, though, would find themselves in the place where they maybe don't know that yet, or they're on the path of discovering it.
Yep.
And the odds of maybe, figuring all that out by the time everything starts to hit is maybe slim, since they're in the process of it all. So what do they focus on?
I think you focus on what's in front of you. And we've talked about that a lot lately, because when you're living in this time that's very volatile, what you'll do is you just look at all the problems. And then what happens when you start looking at all the problems, then it's like it paralyzes you from actually focusing on what's actually in front of you. And then what's in front of you, then what are the skill sets you actually have in order to be able to solve those problems right there? Because I believe every human being has tools and things that they can use in order to be able to go and find this. Yes. So I would tell you what's in front of you, and then what are your skills and your gifts that you actually have? Because, for example, I'm not great with money, right? I don't like I said, board meetings and budgets. I hate those things. So I'm not here trying to figure out tariffs. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to waste my time. I want to be informed about it. I actually probably know more because I studied about it recently, but I'm doing that just kind of and learning from the best minds who talk about it, get a quick overview so I at least have some understanding of it. But I'm not going to spend all my time I'm about to figure out and solve the tariff issue with China. I'm not going to waste my time doing that. I'm going to actually use my gifts and what's in my hands right now to try to push things forward.
So historically, every time that you've started something new, a new business, or maybe got into a new industry, it has always been in an economic downfall, whether that's 2020, 2008 recession, and now we're most likely about to go into another one. Mm-hmm. We're launching a few new businesses. You're going into a couple different industries. Can you share a little bit about how you've adopted that mindset when everything externally looks like it's not going to play out well? You typically run towards risk.
I think there's something mentally wrong with me, first of all. I think that's it. I think I just, for whatever reason, you know what? When you look at Strength Finders, for example, one of my things about Strength Finder is restorative. And so the one thing about restorative is that you see things for what they can be. And so I don't see things broken. I actually see for what they can be. And also so that's the first thing I look at. The second thing is that in going into it, I realize in these moments, if you can get through them, you can then have the ability to really dominate a segment or a market. And I think the third thing is just, I've said this before, my father, one thing that I didn't know until later in my life, because I reflected back on my childhood, is my father made things that were very difficult, he made them seem normal. Things that are rare, he made them seem normal. Again, as I've mentioned here before, being a first black head basketball coach in the University of Akron, where at that time it was 330 schools, I think, or something like that, in college Division I basketball. And there was, I think, less than 10 black head coaches. He was in rare air. And so he made impossible seem normal to me. So when I look at it, I don't see it as impossible. I just see it as just there, in that I believe impossible should be normal. And it's not even I consciously think about it. It's just, I just move through it. I feel like this is in my hands. And so if it's there, I'll do it. So you're right. 08, 09, grew a business in that. And again, 2020, we started our consulting firm when the market was not up and to the right. And then now we probably are going to head into a recession, barring that something doesn't change. And so it's we're starting these new businesses and things like that. And so I think these are great moments, great opportunities that are ahead of us, and you just kind of figure it out.
Can you describe a little bit more about what that's actually like to you? Because even though you enjoy risk and you enjoy being the person to kind of disrupt areas, there's also many times where it's 2 a.m., you're wide awake, you're thinking, really awesome that I'm disrupting this industry, really crappy that none of it's showing up in my bank account. What's that like for you? How do you navigate that mindset? Because that's usually when most people would stop doing what they're doing.
Yeah, it's one of those things to where I have to, at this point in my life now, I have to remind myself of all those moments where I've been there. All those moments I've been there where I'm like, okay, how are we going to do payroll? All those moments where I'm like, this is just a concept, an idea, and I just have put and invested money into this, and time and energy are people's resources. And so I have to remind myself of almost every time that's happened, there's always been where there's another side to it. And so that's what I'm doing right now at those moments, because they're still hitting me. They hit me the other day. I'm just sitting there. I'm like, what in the world are we doing? Because we even spent a lot of time and energy and also money into some of these things that we're doing that right now are just in the beginning phases. So there's not all this, like, there's not this influx of cash coming in and stuff like that. So when you have to do that, then what do you have to do? Then you have to say, okay, do I believe in this enough to then take a risk for credit? Do I sell this? Like, what do you do? And it's like, you have to know that. And something interesting happened the other night is like, I literally was like, after I had this kind of like, existential crisis, which happens every week, I had it, and I had this wild dream. And in my dream, and it's going to sound crazy, in my dream, like literally there was something trying to like to literally kill me. And in that, in my dream, I remember like, I have too much to do. This is so important. I can't die. And it was just like, so like whatever, it just could not kill me. Like I just kept fighting it, and it couldn't kill me. And I got past it and did all this stuff. And I woke up, and, you get up and you're thinking, oh my God, something's wrong with me, right? You instantly go, I got cancer. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like you go to something crazy like that. But honestly, what it is that I just think that what we're doing in this idea of bringing authenticity into the world, I think it's so important that, like, for me, there's just a relentless nature that it's going to happen, it's going to take place, and that I have to be bold and continue to push forward in making that happen. And so I just think that's just the way that, you have to try to live.
That's interesting. I don't want to move past that, mostly because you talk a lot about your mental health journey, and you're quite transparent and honest about what it is that you experience. Do you think that there's something new about right now that's giving you a wind that makes you want to be here more than what you typically felt in the past?
I think so, because I think that I just think that for me, if it's just about me, no. But I also think, too, that I've been given a gift to actually create and to help people walk into what they're supposed to. And so I feel like if I did for some reason take my life, what would happen in that would be, I think other people, would they be able to go and do the things? I think so eventually, but would that be slowed down? I do. Because eventually somebody would have to step in. I think people could help them, but I think that would be slowed down. And for me, it always has to be about other people. And I think that's just been a little bit of change in me, is that the existence that I have is not the existence for myself, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm like, whatever. But when it comes to other people and the benefit of them and seeing them walking, whether it was my wife, my children, you guys, like, and other people, like, that to me is what fuels me right now.
A lot of our listeners are also builders. Like, they find themselves in the position to where they want to start something. They're in the middle of a startup, and like we just talked about, you have launched many things and scaled many things in economic pits, situations where the rules necessarily aren't established. What would you say is unique about your internal compass? What are the questions that you ask yourself that you think maybe are natural, that aren't necessarily natural, and would be beneficial to those listeners?
Yeah, I think that a lot of times when I'm looking at something, like to start something, is there a problem? That's the first thing. And then, do I have the skill set to do it? But here's the biggest thing. When I look at a problem, pretty quick, I can see the basement of why it's a problem. And I think what I used to think was normal, that part's not, where I can see, okay, here's the problem. So, like, we'll probably get into this later about a space that we're operating in right now with this idea in college athletics and NIL transfer portal. The biggest thing is that at the basement of it, there's change. And people don't like change, or they don't like losing things. And what people don't want to get to is the inevitable of where we're at. So part of the reason why I think some strategies around this stuff sucks is because no one wants to deal with reality. No one wants to deal with the reality. This is a professional sport now. So you have to treat it like a professional sport. So you have to end up take the best teams, put it together, and everybody's, put it together, build, make them employees, do the whole thing. And the problem with that is that everybody romanticizes what college athletics used to be. And I'm like, yeah, those incredible times. But it's for fans, they'll look at that and say, yeah, those incredible times. But also, as a former college athlete, you're like, yeah, that's cool and all. I'm great. I got to go to these tournaments. I got an education, right? But if you'd asked me, I could get an education or you're going to pay me $500,000, I would take $500,000 like a million times over. And so now we can't romanticize. We have to adjust and change and not keep looking back. Well, man, we've ruined everything. It's about money. I'm like, we live in a capitalistic society. Where do you think it was going to go? You lived off of free labor for the longest time. The NCAA made billions of dollars as a nonprofit organization off of the backs of student athletes. And that little raggedy degree we got wasn't really worth the amount of money these guys are getting. So I love them actually getting paid now, but we have to put rules and we have to put structures around it right now. And so that's something to me where I see the basement of it, of how we got here, and then how we need to move forward and what's stopping us. So I just think that was normal for people just to see that. I just look deeply within, and because if I think you can find the why we got here and why it's there, I think then you can begin to unravel it and you can begin to find solutions to help it move forward.
So let's dive into your role within college athletics. Before we dive into that, because I think it will be a very useful case study with Find the Yes, can you break down, maybe for somebody who isn't as familiar, what is happening in NIL? What are some of the decisions that we're waiting on? What's in process?
Yeah, so Florida was the first state, and I think it was in 2019, I believe. I believe it was 2019, maybe it was 2020, where the state of Florida jumped in and did this idea where players can make money off their name, image, and likeness. So that's what NIL comes from. And during that time, before, college athletes couldn't. They would be on video games. They would be on, universities were making money off their apparel, all this stuff, and all they would get is a little, they would get their actual, their degree or their scholarship paid for, but that was about it. And so what happened was that there was a change here in Florida to say, no, this is, you cannot limit somebody from making, from making money off of their own business, what they've created. So that opened up this wildfire, what we call NIL. Then also what happens is they call transfer portal, where now before, when I actually transferred from the University of Tulsa to here, Florida State, I had to sit out a year. There was a punishment for doing that. Now you can just transfer. You can transfer 4 times if you want to. And in that, there's no penalty. So this opens up everything now. And so now what was the way things were for 50 some years, the way I grew up seeing college athletics is completely different now. And so it's incredibly disrupted. You now go from coaches just coaching basketball and having to be academic people do that to now all of a sudden they got to be pseudo general managers. They have to manage rosters. They have to build rosters. They have to pay players. They have to re-recruit their same players. They have to do all this while still coaching basketball, building a team, all the pressures that come along with it. So it is such a disrupted industry right now. I think it has incredible opportunity, but I think that we've got to put some regulation. And so we're waiting on, there's supposed to be a House bill that's going to be passed. We're waiting for the judge to sign it to where they'll put what they call revenue share, where all athletes at Power 4 schools will get $20.5 or $20.8 million, right? And it goes for all athletics. So it's all rev share. So if you have a big football program like Florida State, for example, they're probably going to get, 75% of that money or 60, whatever it is. And then maybe basketball gets 15 and then the other sports get broken down that way. So it is a completely complex world. And so it's not going to end there, because as soon as they come out with that, somebody's going to sue. And then somebody's going to pause that. And it's just going to keep going until somebody just actually gets the guts to say, let's create a professional league. So
what does it take to do that?
To create a professional league?
Yeah, and who are the key stakeholders?
I think the key stakeholder, it's always people with money, right? It's the universities, it's the presidents, it's the NCAA. The NCAA is trying to hold on. The NCAA is like the old dude in the club, right? It's like your time. Oh. It's like your time is gone. All right, your time is gone. It's
like the Justin Timberlake concert.
Yeah. Your time is gone. You used to have it. You don't have it anymore. You know what I'm saying? You pimped out all these kids for the longest time, and that's what it was. It was like you pimped these kids out. You made a bunch of money. They didn't, and so now the rabbit's got the gun, and now everybody wants to complain about what these kids are doing, and this is not fair, and blah blah blah, which makes me laugh, because it's the same people who then are the same people who talk about a meritocracy in our country, and they start talking about how, like, that they're voting for these types of people because we shouldn't be limited. We should live in a free economy. But yet and still, then when you see athletes starting to make this money because they're not entertaining you anymore, and you don't have your same fan base, and I used to cheer for them for 4 or 5 years, and now they're going somewhere else. It's ruining sports. Well, no one's saying that to you, Bob, when you leave like Home Depot and you go work at frickin' like wherever you want to go, you can go do that. Why can't they go do that? And so that's the frustrating thing. And normally for me, why it matters to me is because a lot of times the people who this impacts the most are 2 people, women and actually minorities. Because, for example, like, we're not celebrating the fact, and this is what makes me laugh. Even people who celebrate women's rights are like arguing about this. I'm like, I'm like, are you taking crazy pills? This may be the most money like a woman playing sports can ever make. Mm-hmm. There's a girl who literally is going to be a top 3 draft pick in the WNBA who's not going. Why? She can make more money being in college. Good for her. But we like fight against this stuff because it's our tradition or whatever. But usually those traditions are things at some point that have to evolve. We have to keep getting better. And so I think what it ended up coming down to is that it needs to be the key stakeholders, the major university conferences, right? So that needs to be the Big 10, Big 12, not Big 10, Big 12, Big 10, sorry. It needs to be the SEC, it needs to be the ACC, and Pac-12, and I'm forgetting one more. And they need to go in and they need to say, we're going to take these teams, it's going to be our league. And then you're going to put you're going to have its own governing body. You're going to have rules. You're going to have a salary cap, the whole 9. I also think some of the other sports that are now this will be controversial, that are revenue producing sports that aren't big sports at your university campus, I think should come underneath the university. I think the university, they could still be under the athletics, but it's now funded by the university, not funded by the athletic department. And so I think basketball, football, and, like in some places like women's basketball, I think maybe like a baseball potentially, and maybe like one other sport should go underneath like an athletic, and it needs to form its own business, its own company. It needs to become its own LLC, own corporation, and it needs to build out from there. Again, now you can have investors into it, and you can just do it like a professional sports team. But that's a lot. I don't know if people want to do that because they're taking away the purity of the game or whatever. The purity of the game went away and we started having big TV contracts. You got coaches complaining about this, and they make me mad. Dude, you make $8 million a year, and you're talking about a kid who's making money, who actually the only reason why you make $8 million a year is because the freaking kid goes out there and perform, and now you want to argue with them. Well, this is where, like Dabo Swinney. It's just the arrogance of people. Well, we can't do that because they make so much, I worked hard to get here. They worked hard too. And so at the end of the day, it's either we're going to be in a capitalistic society or we're not. You can't have both, and this is the reality of it. Sorry, I'm on my high horse.
Oh,
but
that's perfect.
Yeah,
So how do you find the yes?
I think.
And let me ask one more question before that, actually. Are you waiting for the people with the power to make a decision? What are you doing in the meantime?
100% just disrupting it. So here's the thing for me. So the university I'm working with, at the end of the day, I'm just going to piss people off. Because at the end, you don't move unless you disrupt stuff. And it's not pissing people off for the sake of doing it, but you're going to make people uncomfortable when you're trying to move and go. And here's what I've realized. The more I'm in certain industries, people just want to find safe structures so they don't have to freaking work. They don't now, you know what happened? Those who are willing to work right now, you're talking about finding a yes, it's those who are willing to work because it's going to be uncomfortable. We're not going to have the same systems anymore. So my thing is let's disrupt it. Why do we have to do that? Explain to me why. That's the other thing. I just ask why a lot. And a lot of times the answers I get are absolutely stupid. Well, just the way we've done it. Well, the way you've done it doesn't work anymore. So we're going to keep doing this, or we can change. And what ends up happening is that what I start to realize, I'm a coach's kid. Coaches get hurt in this process is because many times organizational things do not change the way they need to change. And because they don't change, then coaches get fired because people say, well, they just didn't win. Well, it could be the fact that the organization that they're with just does not, they're not in the 21st century and they're still operating like we're freaking doing dial-up internet. And so I'm like, no, we have to move and change. So I think for me, it's getting in there and disrupting. I just ask why. And if you can't give me a good answer why, then I force people to then tell me, okay, how do we get it done? It's any problem solvable. Tell me how we solve it. And I put it back on them because what they want you to do is you to go do their job.
How do you develop the resilience needed for things to change?
It's difficult because sometimes I feel incredibly rejected. Sometimes you go in and you feel like super arrogant when you're not trying to be, because here's the thing. We think dysfunction is peace sometimes. It's because it's the peace it's the way things are, but it can be dysfunctional. I mean, you can live in a dysfunctional home and think it's peaceful because I just have lived this way. I don't know any better. But then you actually go into a home that's not, and you're like, oh, you know what I'm saying? This is different. I think that a lot of times it's hard to keep resilience because when you go in, and when I go into places, it's usually disrupting it, and people think I'm bringing dysfunction. But actually what I see is that, no, how you're living is dysfunction, or it's heading to dysfunction. So let's disrupt it so that we can live in a new way that actually is peace, that actually is the way you humans can flourish, your department can flourish, the organization can flourish. And so that's what ultimately pushes me. And I think now as I got older, what's helped me is because I've seen it done. I've been able to disrupt some different industries, and I've seen it work. And then I've seen where I was crazy, you know, like we started doing basketball training. Everybody's like, what are you doing? No one does basketball training, especially not in Tallahassee. Then I had high school coaches not liking me because they were like, well, you're just trying to take my players. I'm like, well, I wouldn't have a job if you did yours. And so like, that's kind of what it was. And then I've seen now what's happened. Or when we went into consulting and how we've built things out, or went into the church space, it's just, I've seen it play itself out now. So I kind of have, when I feel a sensing of something, then now I'm just kind of relentlessly going after it.
How have you developed the internal structures needed to face what feels like rejection?
I think that
and also I will add too,
yep.
when the rejection is coming from the people that you believe that you're helping, and you know that if you push too hard, that they're also going to remove you from the position.
Yeah, that's a really, really good. I think what I'm learning right now is I have always lived by this adage, and when I don't do it, it ends up messing me up. No one besides two people in my life have leverage on me. Jesus and my wife. That's it. Anybody, I'll burn it down. And then when I keep that mentality, I help people get better. When I get afraid of like, okay, if we lose this person, then we're not going to be here. Financially, it could be this, it never goes well. And so that's how I have to do it. And at the end, I'm not trying to do that, but I can't, like, if I keep hitting up against a wall with people and they're not willing to move from that, like, we're wasting time and money with each other. Like, that's what I'm realizing too. I don't, again, at 46, I'm realizing this, like, man, this is some of the prime parts of my life. I don't want to waste my time with people who don't want to change. I'm not trying to convince you anymore that what I do works or not. It's like, if you think it works, great. If not, okay, I can move on. And that's even part of it, why we're creating these new things, because I just get tired of sitting with people like, all right, let's go through the same song and dance, and you being the same stupid place you've been in forever, versus like, okay, let's just go create it and create organizations that can help. But those who want to do it, I think that allows me to push through it. But it's hard. I have to remind myself sometimes. I mean, you did a great job the other day of helping me remind myself of like, of something you wrote to me a long time ago that helped me realize like, man, oh, no, this is just part of it. And I have to just keep pushing forward in that.
While we're on the topic of NIL, would you mind expanding on any of the hesitations that you believe might be valid whenever it comes to compensating college athletes?
Yeah, I think some of it is, and I would agree with this part of that. What do we do with, like, what are they going to do with the money, right? Are they going to spend it? Another thing is, who's going to do their taxes? Do they even think about taxes? All those types of things. And I get it. But like, I try to, again, that's a problem that's easy to be solved. I think that that people have the freedom of choice. I think the thing is, you have to give people opportunities to educate themselves. You got to give people opportunities to be in situations where they can learn, but also a clear avenues to where they can put their money. You know what I mean? Like, listen, they're young. I think we just get so stupid the older we get to where they're young. Them kids are going to want to stunt some. It's okay. You know what I'm saying? Now, the whole thing, you don't want to blow the entire bag, but you're also like, look, if you didn't come from anything, and then all of a sudden somebody gives you $1 million, yeah, I'm probably going to go buy a chain. And I know everybody's going to be like, oh, that's a chain. And you know who it normally is? It's older white people who say that. But you know, though, somebody gives you $1 million, buddy, you're going to go buy a boat. And then like, oh, but that's way more feasible. No, a boat's a waste of money too, just like buying a chain is. Let these kids do what they want to do, but let them then have room. And so one of the things, I was just on a call before this with an actual investment fund, and we were actually talking about this specifically, about us potentially partnering with them so that when these student athletes come in, we actually say, because that's one of the things I really want to push with the organization I'm working with, is any student athlete that comes in here, that you have to have a financial person that you're working with. It doesn't have to be the one that we're talking about, but you have to have one, because we have to see very clear, because you have to make sure your taxes are taken care of. You have to make sure that, that you're putting money away, that you're actually taking the right investments, stuff like that. You're not going out there and freaking buying your homeboy a studio studio or a freaking car wash. Like, no, like, you know what I mean? Like, you're going out there and you're putting your money in the right place. And so, yeah.
Since we started talking a little bit about the transfer portal, would you mind sharing your opinion on how we help athletes manage the tension between self-belief and ego?
Very important question.
And
okay.
I keep adding something. Everyone's supposed to add something. I think there's also a greater tendency between Gen Z to kind of jump around and not plant their feet somewhere. And I think we see that within the transfer portal, where people are skipping or transferring schools like 3, 4, 5 different times. So would you mind sharing a little bit of your opinion on that and what you believe is the hesitation and what's the value?
Yeah, I think that starting with the idea of your first question of like the idea of ego and value is that, see, I think ego isn't a bad thing. It's just, can you bring your, I love how Coach Case says it, is that, everybody needs to bring their ego into the room because, you need that. It's what's made you who you are. But when you bring your ego, are you willing to defer? See, when you actually have an ego and you know who you are, then you're willing to defer. I use like the late Kobe Bryant as this. When he went into when they did the Redeem team in 2008, Kobe was, one of the best scorers in the NBA, if not the best scorer at that time in the NBA. When he came on that team, the thing he decided to do is like he was going to show these guys how to actually work. And he's like, I'm going to be the best defender. Put me on the toughest guy. And so you're talking about the best scorer in the NBA, one of the best to ever do it, decided to say, I'm not really worried about scoring. I'm going to worry about being the best defender. And they all talk about that. They all talked about how Kobe would do that and how it set the tone, how it literally shifted everything for them, because they're like, he was willing, and again, everybody knew Kobe with his ego. He was willing to bring his ego, but to defer to other people to bring the team what they needed. And so when you actually know who you are, then you're willing. Kobe didn't have to guess, like, am I the best scorer when the best scorers in the NBA? No, he knew he was. So he didn't have to fight and show that on the world stage. Why do I have to do that? All right, no, I am. And so he stepped in to do that. And I think that's what ego is. I think that people have to come in and they have to be willing to know and be confident in who they are and be aware, but then be willing to defer to those who may be better at that or where they can best use another skill they have in order to help the team. Now, with the idea of people staying rooted and playing it is an issue. It's an issue across the board for everyone right now. People don't like tough situations. Everything is toxic. Everything is not good. You know what I'm saying? If somebody's ruining the vibes, then you got to go. And you know what it does? It builds shallow people sometimes. And so what I would say is this, but I think every human being has to make that choice. Some people need to stick it out. Some people, no, you need to keep moving, keep building because of what it's trying to build inside of you. That is why you need, and this is the problem, when you don't have adults helping lead children, what you end up doing is you end up having, emotionally children who, people who may be 40 years old, but they're still emotionally children going out there trying to get a bag for these kids. Oh, well, they ain't doing you right. Go over here. No. He's shooting 10% from the field. He sucks right now. He needs to stay there and get better shooting the ball and then maybe have more opportunity. And so I think it's just for every individual. But what we want to do is our anxiety wants to put this broad slope. No one should leave. No, they're individuals that have the freedom to choose. If they choose not to do that, then what's going to happen is this. Then they're going to have to later in life learn resilience somehow. And so I think that's the thing. So you have to sit through it and go through it. But I think individuals have to make that choice.
How are you helping head coaches find the yes when the rules are quite literally changing by the day?
It's to remind us all the time of like, what is the purpose of the organization? What is like the thing? And so if your thing is, man, I have somebody I work with and theirs was the standard. He has a standard and it was always a standard, man, accountability, toughness, things like that. Well, when the rules are changing, we still have to do this. It comes out of this first principle thinking. All the rules are changing, but what we still have to do, you still got to build a team. That's going to happen. You're going to eventually have to build out a schedule. Okay. You have to, and then in building out your team, you're going to have to like get your team connected. You're going to have to figure out, all the stuff. So I'm like, we have to go first principle. What does it take to build a team? That's the most important thing. And so what I always go back to then is there's like, what's the core value for you? What's the purpose? So if you want to have a team that has this idea of the standard, so then when you're in a transfer portal, then you have to go in there and figure out, man, do I have kids who fit my standard? Not just, oh man, this kid, man, they're a 5-star. The fans will be really happy if I get them, but they're not tough enough. You know what I mean? Like, that's the other thing. People get, they take kids in and then they get frustrated with them. That's the only thing coaches, like, they do bad jobs evaluating and then they blame the kids. Like, no, you suck at evaluating. Don't take a kid who's never proven to be tough and you're a hard-nosed coach and then you just end up crapping on the kid saying the kid's not tough. Well, like, you didn't do a good job. You knew he wasn't tough before he came here. So what do you think? You're like, you're Jesus Christ and you're going to go ahead and change his life magically? No, he's not going to be tough. And you don't bet against consistent behavior. It's undefeated. So he's untough there. He's not going to be tough here. So go get somebody who's tough. Or you want a skill player. If he couldn't shoot there, now all of a sudden you're not the magical wizard that's going to make, oh man, he's going to went from 10% to 50. He's not. You're not that good. Then you recruit shooting. So again, it's all those types of things that go into it.
So for the head coach who feels helpless because every time they want to bring in a player, it's a business deal with an 18-year-old who has an agent and wants this kind of money, and they're trying to keep the culture of a team, they're trying to build something. How do you mentally coach that head coach?
The excuse is, oh, it's all about money. And now that I'm in it, it's not all about money. Money is a part of it, but it's not all about money. The organization I'm working with, the team I'm working with, we've had players take hundreds of thousands less to be here because we were able to cast a vision for where we're going. And I think you've got to find out what you do. And the head coach I work with has that type of personality. He really does. He really can cast a vision and he really believes. That's the other thing is this. Most people will just go to money because you don't believe in what you do. I believe if you believe fully in what you do, you will find the yes. And then you also will be able to cast a vision for people to do that because you are so committed to it. I don't know if you've ever been around somebody, it could be in anything, where they just so are passionate about this. I remember when Jalen, my son, was younger and his infatuation with garbage trucks. Like it was,
And birds.
Yeah, garbage trucks and birds. And when he would go with garbage trucks, that dude would literally sit there and go on YouTube. He would tell me everything in the world about a garbage truck to a point to where I was literally passionate about buying a freaking waste management company for the fact that garbage trucks are the greatest thing in the world because he was so passionate about it, right? I think when you are passionate about something, it attracts that. I just think most guys and most ladies who lead things are not confident in themselves. So when they talk about it, they're not confident. So nobody's going to buy it. Like, what's going to make a kid want to come play for you if you don't believe in what you believe? And so I think that's the biggest thing. You better figure out what you believe in. And it's not just a job. I think a lot of these dudes just have jobs. They don't believe in what they're doing. And I think that's why they're struggling. So then it becomes, then it becomes the excuse. It doesn't matter. This is the game. It does not matter. The university I'm working with right now, we don't even remotely have the closest payroll and highest payroll. But we're figuring out why, because it matters. It matters to them. It matters to everyone that's on that staff. You have to build a staff where it matters to them. And I think most people they suck as leaders, and because they suck as leaders, then they just blame. If all you do is blame circumstances, you suck as a leader. You can't just keep doing that. It's not changing. Stop complaining. Figure it out. It's just life. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, but what's the other option? For us just to sit here and keep bitching and complaining about it? You can't. You got to go figure it out. And that's the thing in life. There's always a way to figure it out.
So for the person who find themselves there, what's the first place they start?
They start with themselves. What is stopping you? Start with yourself of being accountable. Why are you complaining? And I get it. Listen, I'm not saying you got to get that stuff out. But if that's all you're ever doing is complaining, then what's going to end up happening is this: you never move forward. So that's the first thing. The second thing I think you have to do, you're looking within and saying, hey, are you complaining? What are you complaining about? Whatever. The next thing is this: what do you have in your hands? What do you do well? Then lead with that. If you're not a great closer with, it doesn't matter. And this is not just this is in anything. If you're not a great salesperson, then find one. Then who's the best on your team? If you're not great at putting numbers together, who's the best on your team? If you're not the best at putting a pitch together, then who's on your team? If you're a parent, right, and you keep complaining about all the internet and cell phones and all the stuff, right, and social media. Okay, if you're not the most confrontational one in your marriage, who is? If you're not the most organized one in your marriage, who is? Then look what you have in your hands and then look what you do well and then lead with that. I think those are the two biggest things. Start with personal accountability. Second thing, look at what you have in your hands and then build out of that.
So imagine a world where no one ever finds a yes. What do we lose culturally and relationally if people stop searching for it?
We live a declined society. We live in what turned into Rome. We live what happens to Greece. All these were great societies. And again, yes, there was moral things and whatever. But what tends to happen, especially this is one of my biggest concerns for our country right now, is that we've lived in such this decadence and we've lived in such comfort that when you lived in comfort, then you know what? That's all you want is comfort. But what's made, again, what made America quote unquote great wasn't the fact of stuff in the past. There was a lot of stuff that sucked in the past. What made it great was the opportunity to go try to create and make something. And here's what else made it great. What made this country great is the fact of people who were enslaved actually found a way, and people who weren't allowed rights and were treated less than human found a way to still move forward. And so that's why I tell people too, why I do what I do. I'm like, can you imagine me looking at my great-great-grandfather and saying, oh, NIL transfer portal, it's too hard. Oh yeah, hey big dog, I was out here picking cotton. You know what I'm saying? Man, it's like, it ain't that difficult. And so that's what I'm saying. I got so many opportunities right now in my life because of that. And I'm like, my father did what he did. And he had to sometimes swallow his own pride because of people treating him a certain way. I don't. So you think I'm not going to talk crazy to people and do what I need to do? My father couldn't do it. So I'm making up for everybody. My entire my entire ancestry, they couldn't say things. They got beat, some were killed, whatever, because they couldn't say anything. You think I'm not going to talk? 100% I'm going to talk. Why? Because I have the ability to do it now because I owe it. And I'm not talking about stuff just to talk. I'm talking about stuff that moves things forward. And so I think that's just what it is. If a society doesn't do it, a society declines. And I just don't think in your God-given ability, there's always a yes. There's always a will to do it. It's just, do you want to do it or not? And if you're not willing to do it, then shut up and don't complain about stuff. Figure it out. You know what I'm saying? You don't like where your kids are at? How much are you praying for your kids? How much are you actually doing? How much are you actually spending time with them? How much are you actually, listening to them? If you don't like where your marriage is at, what are you doing to fix it? If you don't like where you're at financially, what are you doing? There's always a way. You just have to start. All right, guys, I hope today was actually helpful for you. Again, there's a little bit of intensity there because I really believe so much in this idea of finding a yes. Because let me tell you this, the window that we're living in is not going to last for long. There are going to be rules eventually that get set for the game. And so we are living in a time right now that actually we all have the ability to see things change like never before. The rise of incredibly new technology, a disruptive market, we have a chance to see change actually happen. So it's up to you. What will you decide to do in this current hour we live in? You can complain or you can find the yes. Until next time, keep writing new rules.